All right, welcome to this brand new video and chapter where we're going to talk about the GSAP Flip plugin. Now, before I begin, I should mention if you do kind of hear some noise in my background, that is because I'm in my new studio and it is currently raining on a metal roof. Sorry, itchy throat. So hopefully it's not too bad. But the GSAP Flip plugin is really powerful, and I'm going to show you in a very simple demonstration what exactly it does. And basically, in a nutshell, it makes your life easier if you're trying to perform interesting animations from one state to another. So the best way to describe it is just to show you what I'm talking about. So right here in the project files for this lesson, we'll see that we have simply an unordered list with list item 1, 2, and 3. Now, we also have some styling already in the CSS folder if you open up the main SAS file. The styling is very simple, has nothing to do with the pertinence of this tutorial, the topic of this tutorial just yet. But what it looks like when you open this in live server is this. I have cursor pointer, so they're meant to be clicked, but nothing happens because we haven't created the JavaScript yet. So let's say, for instance, upon click, we wanted the 1, 2, and 3, instead of being columns, to be flipped around and made so that each of them are in rows, so they're stacked on top of each other vertically. So what you would do in the past is you would use GreenSock, for instance, if we're going to do it the GreenSock way, and on click, we would simply define a bunch of CSS properties in JavaScript, through GreenSock animation platform, and we would address like the flexbox direction property and other things like that. But for now, what we're going to do is we're simply going to attach a class that adjusts those, a CSS class that basically attaches those CSS properties to us. In the Flip plugin, we'll look at the very beginning state, like right here, exactly as they are. And it will look at the end state, meaning what the CSS properties are based on that class that we're going to toggle on and off. And it will handle all the animation in between those two states when we click it. That's basically what it does, so I'll show you how this is done. Okay, so the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to create a class that we're going to toggle on and off through JavaScript. So for this class, the class name is going to be adjust. So let me zoom up here. We have adjust, and we're going to specify the properties we want to change about it. So flex, direction, column, and then also the individual list items, because we're going to attach this adjust class onto the UL element. So of course the LI elements, the list item, are embedded within. And we're going to give it a background of red. So they're going to be no longer blue circles, they're going to be red. And then also we're going to change the font size too. And this is to demonstrate another feature of the Flip plugin that you will find out in a second. So let's just save that. And if temporarily we decide to go ahead and add onto the class itself, onto the UL element, a class of adjust, we're going to save that. If we go and take a look at the result, this is what we want. So just by adding that adjust class, we've overwritten those CSS values, applied some new values, and this is what we want in the end state. But when we click on these without the adjust being attached to it, we want it to animate smoothly between this position of being red, this position of being in columns as opposed to rows. And so that's what the Flip plugin will help us do. All right, so let's get this started. Now we already have our CSS class created. What we have to do now is get access, or first we're going to register our Flip plugin. And as you can see right here, I'm highlighting this line right here. It's an actual thing that you need to import through the script element here. And we have to register it. So we're going to do GSAP register plugin Flip. Very simple. Okay. After that, we're going to get access to the list, the unordered list itself. And we should know how to do this already. Const, we're going to say list equals document.query selector. And it's simply going to be the unordered list. Very simple. Next up, we're going to add a list or an event listener of click. And we don't need to pass anything into that, like the event. And now what we want to do, so up to now, everything that you've seen has nothing to do with the Flip plugin, except for the register, comment here, or line rather. But now we're going to start doing things the Flip way. So the very first thing we need to do when we're using the Flip plugin is to get the current state, or in other words, right now there's 3 blue, circles. We want to get all that current state essentially, or when I say state, what are the current CSS properties that are associated with our unordered list that we've gained here. So what we do is we const state, all right, and we say flip.getState, and then we're going to get the state of not the unordered list, but the list items themselves, because we're not going to be animating the unordered list, although we are changing the flex direction property. We want the list items, so in this case. So what we're going to say is just li. All right, and then we're going to leave this empty for now. But in a second, in a little bit, we are going to add another parameter to that. And you'll see what that is. So next up, we want to go ahead and toggle the class on our list element. So what we do is say list.classList.toggle adjust. Now remember, adjust is defined right here. This is what we're adding. This is what we're going to be toggling on and off when this list is clicked. Okay. The final piece of the puzzle is we have to now specify flip from. Now you could use from or to, just like before, but we're not using GSAP.from or to. We're not using our timeline. This is flip, okay? So we're going from what? Well, we're going from the state that was defined right here. We're going from those properties. Next up, we're going to give it a duration, maybe of 2 seconds. We can give it an ease if we wish. So elastic.out 0.3. And we can also give it a stagger to make it a stagger animation. That is literally all we need to do. So let's save it and see what happens when we click it. Okay. So there's a couple things happening here. We can see the movement when we were clicking this is animating. You can see it animates over here, and it's doing this wobble effect because we gave it an elastic easing. If we take that off, for instance, you'll see it'll be smooth. So just like that. We'll keep it there just to make it interesting. But while it is animating the position, it is not animating the transition from the blue background to the red or the font size. And that's because the Flip plugin by default will not animate all properties. All right, it really just animates positional properties essentially. And you can look that up specifically if you type in the Flip plugin and you look at the documentation to see what exactly it actually covers. So if you wanted to animate those extra elements that it doesn't inherently cover, then what you need to do is when we get the state, we put in the parameter right here, and inside of that, we pass in props. And then we can put in all, and that will just inherently cover all of them, or we can specify the individual properties. So what are those individual properties that it's not animating that we want? Well, background and font size. Those are the two. So what we do is say background, and of course we're going to say font size camel case, just like that. So now we save this and watch that. So you could see that if you pay attention to the actual numbers, they are, they're tweening between those two values, those font sizes, and the background is as well. It's not an immediate shift from blue to red. And that's the power of the Flip plugin. So what's also really cool, which is what we're going to take a look at in the next lesson, is you can do the same exact idea right here, except instead of attaching a class to it like this, we can literally move in the node list, the DOM tree, the HTML element, for instance, that we want to animate, and we could put it into a new HTML element. Like, so for instance, you don't have to follow along. If I have a div here and I want to take this, maybe this div has some like different styling for an unordered list, and we want to move this whole list into here, we can do that as well, and it will animate and transition and tween essentially all those properties for us without us having to define any CSS properties. We could simply move elements in the HTML DOM tree or the nodes, and it will create a nice transition for us. So that's exactly what we're going to do, just as the second use case demonstration for the Flip plugin in this chapter. So that's what we're going to do next, and I'll see you then.